Number 1. The Real Ghost of Room 6. It was close to midnight at a provincial hospital in the Philippines. The halls were quieter than usual, though not silent. The faint hum of old fluorescent lights flickered above the white-tiled corridor, buzzing like trapped insects. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, bending against the pale green walls, making the hospital feel more like a mausoleum than a place for healing. Erlinda, a nurse barely 6 months into her career, was assigned the dreaded graveyard shift. She didn't mind at first. She thought she was strong, practical, immune to silly ghost stories. But her seniors had warned her, if you value your sanity, avoid Room 6. At the nurse's station, she shuffled through patient charts, forcing herself to stay awake. The clock ticked louder than usual, each second dragging into her bones. Midnight, 12:15, 12:30. Her shift was uneventful until it wasn't. It began faintly, a sound, a soft, sorrowful weeping echoing through the empty corridor. At first, Erlinda thought it was a patient. She rose from her seat, listening carefully. The sound was so fragile, like a woman crying in grief. She followed it down the corridor. The air grew colder with each step. Her slippers squeaked against the floor. She gripped her flashlight tighter, though the hospital's dim light still glowed above her. The sound led her to a door marked Room 6. Her heart sunk. The door was locked, officially closed for maintenance after a patient's violent death years ago. No one had been inside since. But the crying grew louder. Slowly, Erlinda turned the knob. To her shock, the door creaked open. Inside was pitch dark, colder than the rest of the hospital. The smell of antiseptic mixed with something fouler, like rotting flowers left too long in a vase. On the bed, she saw the silhouette of a woman in a hospital gown. Her back was turned, shoulders trembling, sobbing uncontrollably. Erlinda whispered softly, "Are you okay, ma'am? Do you need help?" The crying stopped. The woman turned her head. Slowly, unnaturally. Erlinda froze. Her face was deathly pale, her eyes hollow, dark sockets staring straight through her, and her mouth stretched impossibly wide into a soundless scream. Then came the shriek, a bone-chilling, glass-rattling shriek that pierced the silence and made Erlinda stumble back. She slammed the door and ran, her heartbeat echoing louder than her footsteps. At the nurse's station, Erlinda's senior nurse noticed her trembling hands and pale face. She whispered, "You saw her, didn't you?" Erlinda nodded. The senior's voice dropped lower. "The patient who died in Room 6, she never left. Every nurse who works this shift eventually meets her. Some see her crying, some hear her whispering, and some," she trailed off, "don't last the night." The rest of the night dragged on like an eternity. Every time Erlinda walked past that hallway, she felt eyes following her. The faint whispers grew louder. Her name, Erlinda, over and over. Once, while checking on a patient, she felt icy fingers graze her arm. When she turned, no one was there. The heart monitor in the room spiked for no reason, then flatlined before stabilizing again. At 3 a.m., known as the Devil's Hour, the lights flickered violently. Erlinda swore she saw a shadow standing at the end of the hallway, tall, gaunt, unmoving. When she blinked, it was gone, but the cold lingered. Erlinda's senior nurse later told her the full story. Years ago, a woman was admitted to Room 6 after a tragic accident. She was said to be in critical condition, but no relatives came. She died alone. The staff claimed she screamed so loud in her final moments that it echoed through the entire wing. After her death, patients reported seeing her standing at the foot of their beds, weeping. Some claimed she climbed onto their chests, suffocating them in their sleep. Eventually, the room was sealed, but the haunting never stopped. Near dawn, Erlinda returned to the station to gather her belongings, but something compelled her to look one last time down the corridor. Room 6's door was wide open. Inside, the woman was standing now, facing her. Her blood ran cold. The figure raised her hand, pointing directly at her. The lights burst, plunging the hall into darkness. In that black void, Erlinda heard the whisper right against her ear. "Stay with me." She screamed and collapsed to the floor. When the other nurses found her, she was trembling, pale, unable to speak. She resigned after only 3 more shifts, never to work in that hospital again. Today, room 6 remains locked, but staff swear they still hear sobbing at night. New nurses are always warned, but curiosity has led many to push the door open, only to leave the hospital for good. Some say the woman waits for someone who will stay with her. Others believe she wants revenge on those who ignored her final cries. And if you ever work a night shift in a hospital and you hear faint weeping from an empty room, you might want to walk the other way, because not all patients ever leave. Number 2. The Crying Child on the Road. It was 1999, the rainy season. Manila's streets glistened with water, reflecting the faint glow of dim street lamps. The rain was relentless, hammering the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists. Marco, a taxi driver in his late 40s, had been on the road since sundown. The city was quieter than usual. Most people stayed home during storms. He should have gone home too, but he needed the money. His cab rattled as he turned onto a rural road, a shortcut he'd taken hundreds of times, but tonight something about it felt wrong. The silence between the raindrops was heavy, almost suffocating. That's when he saw her. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, standing at the roadside in the downpour. She wore a white dress, soaked through, clinging to her thin frame. Her long black hair covered most of her face. She didn't wave, she didn't move, she just stood there. Marco slowed. Against his better judgment, he rolled down the window. "Are you lost, little girl?" he called out. The girl said nothing. Slowly, she lifted her head just enough for him to see pale skin, lips trembling. She gave the faintest nod. Compassion outweighed fear. He unlocked the door. "Get in. You'll catch your death in this storm." The girl opened the back door and slid in silently. Cold air rushed in with her. The temperature dropped instantly. Marco rubbed his arms. "Where's your house?" he asked. The girl's voice was faint, almost drowned by the rain. "Take me home." She gave him an address in a street he barely recognized. He nodded, gripping the wheel. The wiper struggled against the rain, squeaking across the glass. He checked the mirror. The girl sat motionless, hands folded neatly on her lap, staring out the window. Her skin looked too pale, almost bluish under the dim interior light. At first, Marco thought it was his imagination, but then the radio flickered on by itself. Static. Then faintly, a child's laughter came through, though the radio had no signal. He quickly switched it off. The smell hit next, damp earth, like fresh soil, like a grave. He coughed, glancing at the mirror again. She hadn't moved, but was she closer? She was sitting at the very edge of the seat now. He wiped condensation off the mirror and froze. Her reflection stared straight into his eyes, while her actual body still looked out the window. He blinked, heart racing. The reflection smiled faintly, lips stretching too wide. He swerved, nearly hitting a tree. "My God," he whispered, crossing himself. The rain grew heavier, drowning the world outside. And then he heard it, a whisper. "Marco." He nearly jumped out of his seat. He hadn't told her his name. Another whisper. "Marco, take me home." Her voice was layered, echoing, as though more than one person spoke at once. Finally, he pulled up to a small, weathered wooden house at the edge of the road. A single light flickered weakly on the porch. Relieved, he parked and knocked. An elderly woman opened the door, clutching a candle. Her face was drawn, tired. "Why are you here at this hour?" she asked. Marco gestured at the taxi. "Your granddaughter? She was standing in the rain. I brought her home." The woman's candlelight trembled. Slowly, she shook her head. "My granddaughter died 3 years ago. On this road. She was hit by a speeding car during a storm. Exactly like this." Marco turned, blood freezing. The back seat was empty. The seat belt dangled. Only rainwater dripped where she sat. The old woman whispered, "You're not the first driver to bring her back." Marco drove off in silence, heart pounding, refusing to look in the mirror again. But that wasn't the end. For nights after, every time it rained, he swore he saw her pale reflection in the glass, sometimes in the rear-view mirror, sometimes in shop windows as he drove past. And once, just once, he woke in the middle of the night to the sound of dripping water inside his room. He turned on the light. There, at the corner of his bed, stood the little girl in white, drenched, whispering, "Take me home." Marco quit driving at night, but to this day, locals still whisper about the crying child of the road. Some drivers ignore her, some stop, but those who stop never forget her face. And if you ever find yourself driving alone on a stormy night, and you see a child standing by the road in a white dress, keep driving, because the dead still need a ride home. Number 3. The apartment beside the funeral home. Liza was 23, freshly graduated, excited to finally live on her own. She worked in Manila and needed a cheap place near her office. When she found a small apartment with rent nearly half the price of others, she couldn't believe her luck. The landlord seemed eager to sign, almost too eager. He avoided eye contact when she asked why it was so cheap. He just muttered, "It's near a funeral home. Some people don't like it." Liza laughed nervously. "That doesn't scare me. The dead can't hurt you." But she was wrong. Her first night was quiet, until 2 a.m. She awoke to a sound. At first faint, then steady. It came from the wall beside her bed, the wall she shared with the embalming room of the funeral home. She thought workers were busy, but why at 2 a.m.? The next night, it came again. By the third night, whispers came with it, low voices, chanting, Crying? It was hard to tell. She pressed her ear to the wall. The voices grew clearer, mourners wailing, but there was no funeral. She peeked out her window. The funeral home was closed, no lights, no workers, just silence outside. But inside her walls, someone was there. At 3:11 a.m., she awoke again. Her room felt heavy, as though the air itself was watching her. She turned, and she saw him. A tall man stood in the corner. He wore a barong Tagalog, crisp and white. Around his neck was a wilted garland of sampaguita. His skin was gray, lips bluish, eyes sunken, empty. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stood, staring. Liza's breath caught. She shut her eyes, whispering prayers. When she opened them, he was gone. But the smell of formalin filled her room, burning her nostrils. Shaken, she confronted the funeral home caretaker the next morning. His face grew grim. "You saw him, didn't you? The man in the barong." He told her the truth. Years ago, a body was embalmed there. His family never came. He was left unclaimed and after weeks, buried in a common grave. Some say his spirit never accepted it. He walks, he searches, he thinks he still has a home. Liza tried to laugh it off, but deep down, dread settled in her chest. The nights grew worse. Objects moved. Her chair shifted positions. Her toiletries fell off shelves. Her door creaked open slowly by itself. Smells lingered. The scent of candles, flowers, and formalin would fill her room even when the windows were open. The knocking grew closer, not just through the walls, now from under her bed. She began waking with bruises on her arms, cold finger-like marks. Neighbors started asking if she was okay. They claimed they heard screaming from her unit, but Liza had never screamed. It wasn't just nights anymore. During the day, shadows moved across her walls, even when the curtains were drawn. She'd hear faint funeral chants echoing from the bathroom. Once, while brushing her teeth, she glanced at the mirror, and behind her stood the man in the barong, smiling faintly. She turned, but the room was empty. When she looked back, the mirror still showed him, standing closer. One night, she awoke again at exactly 3 a.m., the devil's hour. Her room was icy cold. Her blanket felt heavy, as if someone was pressing down on it. Then, the mattress dipped. Someone was lying beside her. Her breath froze. Slowly, she turned her head. The man in the barong was there, inches away, his dead eyes locked on hers, smiling with cracked bluish lips. She screamed, but no sound came out. His mouth opened wide, unnaturally wide, as he whispered, "Stay with us." The lights flickered violently. All around her, she heard dozens of whispers overlapping, mourners crying, prayers being said. The walls shook with knocking, the smell of formalin choked her. And then, silence. She fainted. By morning, she packed her things. She told the landlord she was leaving. He didn't even ask why, just nodded, like he'd heard it all before. Liza left that very day, abandoning her deposit. The apartment has remained empty ever since. Renters never last more than a week. Locals whisper that the unclaimed souls from the funeral home wander there, restless, slipping through the thin wall between the living and the dead. And so, the apartment stands. Doors locked, curtains drawn. But sometimes late at night, People walking past say they hear knocking from inside. And if you dare to look through the window, you might see him, a man in a barong, waiting in the shadows, smiling faintly, still searching for a home. If you want more of this video, leave a like and subscribe.